All right. Good afternoon. My name is Matt Sossman. The presentation I chose was to go over the panel interview. It's a subject that I'm very familiar with. It took me 4 years to get hired, so I've been to many panel interviews. I've researched many books, researched many YouTube videos on what the departments are looking for as far as a panel interview. And I can attest to the last 3 panel interviews that I went to, all 3 offered me jobs. They happened to be at the same time. So like I said, with a lot of studying and a lot of trial and error, I don't want to say mastered the panel interview, but something obviously worked the last couple times. Okay, this is the panel interview. All right, I just want to go ahead and get started, tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Matt Sossman. I am born and raised in Brandon, Florida, right there at Brandon Regional Hospital is where I was born. I lived in the surrounding Lithia, Valrico area, Bloomingdale area for a very long time. So I've only left that area with the exception of probably about 8 years where my father took a job in Gainesville and later on when I attended college at the University of Florida, or the community college there anyhow. I am a fire medic at Charlotte County Fire in EMS. I was hired May 20th of 2015. Those of you that don't know a lot about Charlotte County Fire EMS, they're kind of a forgotten county. A lot of people don't know about us, especially up here. It is a great department. If you're wondering where Charlotte County is, Punta Gorda, Port Charlotte, Englewood, and it's where the Boca Grande fishing tournament is for the tarpons every year. That's Charlotte County. So that's Charlotte Harbor where all those big tarpon roll through every year, and they have that huge fishing tournament that you probably see on Sun Sports or FSN Florida. Like I said, I have been to many different panel interviews. If I count them up correctly, I believe there's 8 panel interviews that I have personally attended. And from the first one to the 8th one, I changed some stuff. One, I matured and I grew a little older, and I understood, my definition of what integrity has kind of changed over the years, and for the better. And I matured, like I said, I matured a lot more from my first interview to my last interview, which is probably why I eventually got hired with Charlotte County. But when we were going through the process, nobody, especially in the fire academy, we had a half day where we sat in and the instructors brought everybody in and asked them questions, and it was designed very, very similar to a panel interview, but the research pretty much had to be done on my own. I had to get the books, I had to watch the YouTube videos, and I had to figure something out because the first 2 or 3 were just pretty. I left there and I knew, I was like, wow, that was bad. That was real bad. So I've gotten a little bit better at it over the years. So hopefully this will help you out, so you guys can kind of, not have to go through a 4-year process like I did. But with that being said, if it does take you 4 years, you have to ask yourselves, how bad do you want to be a firefighter? Because I see continuously over the years, all the fire departments, all the fire academies are pumping out 3 to 4 classes a year worth of students. 2 or 3 full-time classes and probably 1 or 2 part-time classes. So the amount of firefighters that are introduced for their minimum standards to the state of Florida over the course of a year has probably got to be upwards of thousands. I don't know the exact research on it, but I know there's a lot of guys that come out, a lot of guys and gals that come out, and I know that the amount of jobs are very small. If you're getting into it right now, there are a lot of large FRS departments, and due to Rick Scott's introduction of the drop program, there's going to be a lot of the guys that are a little bit older that are going to have to get out over the next year or within the next year, actually. So there actually is an opportunity, especially right now. The last three and a half years, it's been pretty tough, kind of tough. There's been a lot of the FRS departments hiring, but I guess probably 2 years before that it was really rough. Anyhow, so the objectives for this presentation are, one, I want you to get an understanding of how to prepare for your panel interview. The next thing is I want you to also get an understanding of the possibilities and how to be successful during this panel interview. And lastly, I want you to understand the character qualities that are going to help you in the panel interview as long as having a prosperous career in the fire department. And with that being said, I don't want to get on a soapbox, but the firefighter is probably one of the most trusted servants in America. People, when they call 911, the dispatcher tells them, go open your front door. And the first thing that those people do is they open that front door and they just walk away. And they know that we're coming in there. And they didn't prepare for us to be there. They've got jewelry, they've got money, they've got all sorts of things hung out on the counter. They leave their kids in the middle of the family room, their dogs, all their loved ones, and they trust us to go in there because firefighters are very trusted individuals of the community. It's the only job that you're going to find where somebody's going to come running out to you and hand you their baby and say, do something. People aren't going to hand their children over just like that. So like I said, it's one of those jobs where that's how much people trust us. I'm a complete stranger, and somebody could potentially come up to me and hand me a baby and say, help me. All right, this is a nice picture of the panel interview. It really depicts how it is in these interviews, because this is subconsciously the mighty panel interview. And you may think that you have this, and when you show up, I promise you're going to get nervous. But this is a good picture to depict it, because you've got all your chiefs over on this area, and then you've got your lone interviewee right there. And it's funny. It's just kind of like, it's almost like a fight scenario where you're lined up in different corners, except for in their corner, they've got like 5 or 6 people. This is some of the stuff you should be familiar with for the pre-interview. Number 1, shower up, clean cut, and clean shave. So the morning of your panel interview, you get up. Don't necessarily have to go get a haircut that day. Probably a fresh haircut would be very appropriate for the situation. And make sure that you're clean shaven and you have taken a shower before you go in there. You don't need to douse yourself with cologne or anything like that, but just make sure that you're very presentable, that your tie is tight, that your suit's buttoned up, just that everything's almost to the nines, if you will. And I gave you some examples, some clean-cut, clean-shaved guys. It looks like there's a kid here from boot camp, and then the next one is a couple old salty guys that look like they've been in the military for a couple years, but they're still clean-cut and clean-shaved. Next is pick a simple black suit with a simple tie. A power tie might be appropriate, but I would recommend a black suit, white shirt, and like I said, probably like a solid black tie is what I wore for the 2 interviews that I got hired, that actually said yes to me. My first interview, I was going in there with a red shirt and a black tie that had red stripes across it. And the next one, I went in with the powder blue tie, and I had a pinstripe dark chocolate suit with a pair of I believe they were dark black or brown loafers. So I looked flashy when I went in there, and that's not what they want to see when you go in there. What they're looking for is just like this guy, just a clean cut, clean shave. These guys don't want you to stand out because of the suit and the appearance that you chose to wear, because they're looking at people that have character in the fire department. A lot of people that are going to come in those flashy suits are people that are characters. And we have enough characters in the fire department that they're looking for the guys that aren't characters. They're looking for the guys that are going to play by the rules. They're going to play nice in the sandbox with everybody else. They're going to take pride in adhering to the SOPs and SOGs of that department. And they're just looking for a guy that doesn't stand out because of his uniform. They're looking for the guys that stand out because they can, when you walk out of the room shaking their hands, once you see the chief, they say, that was a really nice guy. I really like that guy. He has exactly the type of moral character and the type of person that we're looking for to represent this department. With that being said, I went ahead and I put some flashy suits on here. This is the NFL Sunday Countdown. I don't know if you're familiar with it. I'm a big NFL fan. Go Bucks. But if you look, you got Boomer, Ditka, Keyshawn Johnson, Chris Carter, and TJ sitting there discussing what's going to happen that week in football. And generally, if you watch this show, these guys have on very flashy suits. They're pretty awesome. They're great suits. I would wear any one of them to a wedding. Although, to a panel interview, like I said, I wore flashy suits in the beginning when I first started, and I continued to get turned down. And I wore plain suits towards the end when I started to mature a little bit more, and I started getting yeses. So with that being said, just a strong suggestion for you. Another strong suggestion is 15 minutes early in the fire department is on time. I am still in my probationary year for another, I think I've got less than 2 months, just under 2 months to go now. I've only been cleared for a little while. Our training process is pretty extensive down there in Charlotte County, as a lot of times you're on the rig and you just got an EMT. There's no double medic rigs down there or rescues. It's a medic and an EMT, and a lot of times, I found myself working a CHF patient by myself with my partner, and the engine's 10 minutes out, so I just take off, and meet up with the engine somewhere. So with that being said, the process for Charlotte is kind of extensive. So I'm pretty new to this, but what I was getting at before I got off track was when I go into work, I get up here at my house in South Shore, Hillsborough, which is the Apollo Beach area, and I get up at 5 a.m., I'm showered and out the door and ready to go and got all my stuff by 6 a.m. I'm generally down there on shift between about 7 and 7:20, depending on how traffic was and which station I'm at, depending on how far north or south it is in Charlotte County. When I show up that early, these guys literally are ready to cook me breakfast, and honestly almost feels like they're going to go in and get me a birthday cake or something, because a lot of guys do show up 5 minutes early. If you're the guy that's going in to interview to be the new guy, you need to be there 15 minutes early minimum. That's on time. I strongly suggest between 30 and 45 minutes. One, it kind of gives you a chance to go over some stuff and calm yourself before the interview, get used to the atmosphere of the office that you're going to be sitting in. And, it's kind of nice because you're going to go in there and there'll probably be a couple other guys waiting to interview, and you can kind of, shoot the breeze with those guys and talk a little bit. And that's kind of nice. It loosens up the atmosphere a little bit as well. Have a presentation folder for each member of the panel. Now, when I say a presentation folder, it's going to be hard to see because I don't have the lights on here. Let me go ahead and hit that real quick. Okay. Now, the presentation folder this is a binder that I have. And when I go in, I have all of my certificates in this binder right here. And then what I've got here, this is just a simple project folder that you can get from Staples. And it's just a clear folder, just a project folder. This is like navy blue. I think this is one of the more expensive ones, but it's the only one that they had while I was there. So I got this. This is for my last interview for Charlotte. And what I put in here is, first page would be a cover letter. You flip that over. The second page would be your resume, and the third would be your references and your letters of recommendation. You're not going to want to put anything more than that in there. The reason for that is strictly because if you got all your NIM certificates, and then you've got your fire standards, and you got your EMT, and then you have your wildland firefighting, and then you're a paramedic, so you've got ACLS, PHTLS, ITLS, PALS, whatever it is that you have, that folder can get awful thick real quick. So you don't want to hand these guys too much. And I would recommend having 10 of those at the minimum, because if you go into the panel interviews, I've never been to a panel interview with the city of Tampa, but I know they stack a lot of people in those panel interviews, as many as 10. So I would have enough to go around the room and hand each panel member your credentials and something that they could see about you, because the visual aids really help, and it looks very professional that you took the time and the respect to have something ready for those guys. It shows that you respect their department and that you want to be a part of their department, and you went ahead and you went the extra mile to make one of those. Make sure you bring all your documents, certifications with you. Like I said, I've got this leather carry-all or whatever it is. I got it from Walmart. but it's something that you can carry in. It looks professional. It's not a huge briefcase or anything like that. And you can put all those presentation folders in there, and when you get in the room, you can kind of just hand them out, one by one after you're done shaking everybody's hands and introducing yourself. The next thing is you want to be confident, not to be confused with arrogant or cocky. When I first went into that interview that I told you guys about with Hillsboro, I was very nervous, and I wanted to tell them how bad I was, how I could beat through doors with flathead axes, and how I could, drag a 400-pound person out of a building. And I wanted to tell you how awesome I was and how great I could do things. And that was cocky, that was arrogant, and I didn't really understand that back then. Back then I also, in the volunteer fire department, I did a lot of different things, but the reason that I did them, like clean and was a good probationary guy, is so I could get noticed by the guys that were career personnel at the station on the rescue and get letters of recommendations for them. So initially, I thought integrity was just doing the right thing, but a lot of times what I've learned over the years is you can be doing the right things for the wrong reasons. And that's what I was doing when I was a rookie as a firefighter. And after being rejected by Hillsboro, it taught me a very good lesson that you do the right thing just simply because it's the right thing, not because there's any payoff. The truly healthy and right thing to do is just to always do the right thing just because it's the right thing, not because you're trying to get a job, not because you're trying to promote to lieutenant, not because you're trying to promote to captain. You just do the right thing just because it's the right thing. It represents the department well, and more specifically, it represents you well. And if you hold yourself accountable for all your actions and continue to hold yourself accountable, you'll have a very successful career. And you probably won't be disciplined that much either throughout your career. The interview. Now, this is very important. The first thing you want to do, you're probably going to be sitting in there waiting for some of these for a gentleman to come out. He's probably going to come out and get you. It's probably going to be a chief. The first thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to walk right up. You want to give a good handshake. Say, "Nice to meet you, Chief Matt Sossman." He'll probably introduce himself, and then you say, "Thank you for the opportunity," if you get a chance to do that. Good eye contact, good handshake. Now, you don't want to go doing like a gangster handshake or like this is a tennis player, some Russian tennis player giving old George Bush, the first Bush, dap. So you're going to want to stay away from those. Probably bad ideas. And when you get into that room, I don't care if there's 10 panel members on there, on that board, you go around the room and you introduce and shake everybody's hands, because those people that are on that panel board have earned your respect and they deserve your respect, and they're there for a reason, and they've been doing this for a long time. So my suggestion is that you go around in the room and you shake everybody's hand and introduce yourself. As soon as that's done, I would begin handing those presentation folders out to everybody that you can in the room. That's the best thing to do. Okay. And now, once you introduce yourself, what I want you to remember is this, and this is what I did towards the end of my interviews. I didn't sit down until they asked me to sit down. So I would stand next to my seat, and when one of those chiefs said, "You could sit down now, son," I would take a seat. And that was just my personal experience. Like we talked about earlier, shaking everybody's hands. If you go around the room and they're like, "That's enough, you can sit down," and they tell you to sit down, don't ignore their orders and continue to shake everybody's hand. Just take a seat. But when you take that seat, they're going to start asking you questions, and you're going to want to start scanning the room to make eye contact. Now, one specific chief is going to ask you a question, and generally what I did towards the end of my panel interviews, towards from the 1st to the 8th, is I would scan the room. So if I had a chief that asked me a question, I would directly give eye contact to him or her, say, "Yes, sir," "Yes, ma'am," and as soon as I was done with my introduction of stating my question, I would look around the room. But inevitably, I would always pretty much direct most of my focus towards that chief that asked that question, although I did continue to scan the room and make eye contact. And you'll see how it is. There's going to be a lot of the chiefs that have their head down, and they're going to be writing and scribbling stuff down. And they have a score. A lot of them have a scoring sheet, so they're going to be scoring you. And there's these little algorithms, just like in the ACLS protocols, seeing if you hit this mark and that, and then you're. Some of them are based on a point system. So they will be scribbling down, but the people who are looking up at you, make eye contact with them. Stop and talk to them for a second before you go back to the person that initially asked the question. And this is a really good example. This guy's got his kind of lean forward on the table. You want to have good posture and be sitting up in your chair. But as you see, there's 3 members of this board sitting across from this gentleman. It's him by himself. And as you can see, he's looking directly across from the gentleman to his right, on the left side, from their left side on the table, and it looks like he's looking directly at him. And as you can see, these 2 members of the board are also looking directly at him. So you could look at this guy, answer your question, but then kind of scan back to these 2 to make eye contact with them, just to show the respect that they're there in that interview. Also, you want to speak clear and concise. So with me, I don't know if I'm doing it on this presentation, but a lot of times I can talk kind of fast when I get excited or when I'm very nervous. So you're going to want to make sure that you really emphasize your words and properly pronunciate the words that you're speaking. And this is a good example of what not to do. This is a commercial. I think it was from before I was born.
Got it. So you want to work here? What really makes you think you deserve a job? Well, sir, I think on my feet I'm good at figures time for sharp mind. Excellent. Can you start on Monday? Yes, sir. Absolutely. Without hesitation. Congratulations. Welcome aboard. Wonderful. And in conclusion, Jim Bilbao, call freight, load, door, cable, 10. Business is business, and as we all know, in order to get something done, you got to do something. In order to do something, you got to get to work. So let's get to work. Thank you. Petey, you did a bang-up job. I'm putting you in charge of Pittsburgh. I know it's perfect, Peter. That's why I picked Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's perfect. Peter, may I call you Pete? Call me Pete.
There's a Mr. Schmittler here to see you.
I'll wait 15 seconds.
Can you wait 15 seconds?
I'll wait 15 seconds.
Congratulations on your deal in Denver, Dave. I'm putting you down to deal with Dallas. Don, is it a deal? Do we have a deal? It's a deal. I got to go. I got a call coming in. Hi, Doc. Just double down.
In this fast-moving, high-pressure, get-it-done-yesterday world, aren't you glad?
And that's an old FedEx commercial. I think it was probably first aired during the Super Bowl. The character qualities that they're looking for in the fire department, and this is anywhere in the fire department, is you're looking for honesty, integrity, courage. Looks like I double put in honesty, but it's really important. Trustworthiness, reliability, accountability, dedication, passion, pride, heart, desire, and team player. And those are all things that you can kind of spit out in the interview, but what I really want you to focus on and what I really want you to remember at this point is think of stories where you have displayed these traits and these characteristics, because you will be asked. You will be asked, think of a time, they'll ask you, what does integrity mean to you? And then they're going to ask you to name a specific time when you showed integrity. You need to be ready for that question, because believe me, it looks really bad and it's embarrassing when they first ask you and you start fumbling over your words as you're sitting there trying to rack back and use all these retrieval cues in your memory to try and bring up a memory, an illicit memory of when you showed a good deal of moral turpitude or integrity. So make sure that you practice this before you get in there. Another thing they're going to ask you is they're going to ask you of a time when, or they're going to ask you about what's a negative characteristic that you have about yourself. And there's a book that I'm going to refer to you guys to at the end that really helps out that kind of stuff. But you're going to want to take that characteristic and tell them what your negative flaw is. But it should be a flaw that can also be a good thing. So as much as it's a defect of your character, you still want it to potentially be an asset. With me, I said that I'm impatient, and that a lot of times I want to do things and I want to get things done now, and I want to get things done when I want to get done. And in the fire department, they like that kind of stuff. They want you to get things done right when they ask you to do it. They don't want you to procrastinate till the end. So I said impatience, but I also said at the end of that statement that the thing that the impatience helps me out with is the opposite of it is perseverance. And I'm tenacious and I persevere through situations and I have a don't quit attitude. And that's kind of what I related my impatience to. And that seemed to work out well for me. And I put this little picture down here just to let you know, character does count. And if you don't have any character, you know, if it doesn't show in the interview, it will eventually show in the fire department. And chances are, you know, you're probably not going to do that well in the fire department. All right, customer service. My goodness. So much of what we do now involves customer service and taking people to the hospital. Customer service is paramount. How do you treat your patients? How do you treat people? You will be asked. My last couple of interviews, one of the famous questions, especially if you are interviewing for a transporting EMS agency or transporting fire department where you're going to have a rescue and you're going to be transporting people, they're going to want to hear customer service. That is important. It's paramount. My last couple of interviews, the entire time I was in there, I didn't talk about the negatives. I didn't talk about anything. I talked about customer service. And I think what really got me the job with Charlotte County, and I've since talked to my chief about it, is he said that he really enjoyed my answer because what I said is they were talking about what can you provide Charlotte County. And I told them that I could provide a customer experience. And I asked all of them if they had been to Disney World, and everybody said yes. And if you think about Disney World, my answer was, when you go to Disney, you don't get a customer service. You don't get customer service. You do. You get very good customer service, but you get a customer experience where everybody is dressed accordingly, and you know the ride attendants are dressed up, and even down to the hotel rooms on the Disney campus, if you will, is it's an experience. It's magical. You take the kids there, they love it. Even when you're an adult, you still feel like a kid going there because it's Disney. You know, that's what Walt Disney, that was his goal when he was building Disney World in the 50s, is he wanted to create a customer experience, not customer service. He went above and beyond customer service. And that's what I told those guys is what I do on the rescue or ambulance. So, and I related that to, or I can relate it to you guys. Christmas Eve, we were working. We had only run 2 or 3 calls during the day. I was at our busy station in Charlotte County, and we got through dinner. It was a great day. I was at our busy station, one that usually runs about 26 calls between an engine and 2 rescues. And so it's not really that crazy busy. But anyhow, after 7 o'clock, I think the whole station had only gotten 6 or 7 calls. So, and I'd only run 3 on the rig. 7 o'clock hit, and everybody called 911. Everybody. We got 5 calls after midnight. We were exhausted. And after my 4th call after midnight, it was like 3:45 in the morning, and it was a little old lady who called us from one of our independent living facilities. We get up there. She said she's having abdominal pain, and when I get up there, she's in the bathroom. She has the door open for us. We wheel the stretcher in. You know, I knock on the bathroom door. Are you okay? Is everything okay? She says, yes, I'm just using the restroom, sweetheart. I'll be out in a second. I said, okay, are you able to walk? Yes, sir, I'm able to walk. So we lowered the stretcher down, and she comes walking out with her bags all dressed up and everything. And this is about probably anywhere from a late 70s to mid 80s year old female. I don't remember how old. And you know, it was, she probably did, she had a hernia. I could see it poking out. And she had been diagnosed with a hernia, and she was supposed to go to the doctor the following week between Christmas and New Year's to get scheduled for her hernia surgery and everything. And more, I would say that she probably didn't need to go to the hospital by ambulance, but there was something new it was just hurting her. And I looked around and I saw pictures of her and her husband, and obviously he wasn't there. He'd probably since passed away. It's Christmas Eve, Christmas morning at this point, and I realized she's probably very, very lonely. Anyhow, so what I did is I got her on the stretcher. I asked her for a Social Security. She gave me a Social Security number that started with a 0, which means she's probably from the Northeast. So I asked her, where are you from? And then, you know, we started talking. I put my tablet down. You know, she started crying, told me that her husband had passed away, and I knew she was lonely. So I just patted her on the shoulder, you know, and, ignored my tablet and just rode to the hospital with her. And that's that customer experience that I'm talking about. Customer service could have been like, oh, I'm sorry, ma'am, that's terrible, that's awful, while I'm still typing on my tablet. But that wouldn't have been what she needed at that point. What she needed is she just wanted some company because she was lonely on Christmas. So, you know, that's what I gave to her. That's how I treated that patient on the way to the hospital. Anyhow, let's move on to the next. This right here is a video of some pretty bad customer service.
Oh, I'm sorry. We're only boarding rows 9 and above right now. You'll have to wait.
I'm in row 8.
Please step aside, sir.
It's just one row, don't you think it's okay?
We'll call your room momentarily. And over to the crescent rolls and we do the cranberry. You know I can't cook.
Okay, well, can I please you on hold real quick while I check the knowledge base? All right, thanks.
Step aside, sir.
Excuse me, I think you forgot my bread.
Bread, $2 extra.
$2, but everyone in front of me got free bread.
You want bread?
Yes, please.
$3. No soup for you.
Could you tell me about some of your things, please? Okay. See that one over there? That is a phone.
Yeah, well, I'll see you tomorrow then. Gobble, gobble. Oh, bye-bye. Thank you for waiting. We'd like to continue boarding the aircraft now. We're now boarding all rows, please. All remaining rows. Hello. Enjoy.
Okay, that was just that little quick video. And gonna bring it up towards the end here. This is references that I was telling you about. There's a book called Smoke Your Firefighter Interview by Paul S. Lepore, I believe is how you pronounce his name. And this book is, if you look at it, there's just a bunch of situational questions. This is what it looks like right here. There's a ton of situational questions in here, and it's just going to ask you a lot of the questions that they're actually going to ask you on the interview that you can prepare yourself for, so you don't have to, like I said, be sitting there twiddling your thumbs, racking through your brain to try and figure out what you're going to say. Anyhow, also, I did a lot of research on YouTube, and there's videos of various different chiefs that are talking about situational questions and just what they're looking for in general. And that's going to be the end of our presentation there. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Like I said, I really hope that you guys, get hired right off the bat and you don't have to go through the process that I went through. I wouldn't change my experience for anything because it kind of formed me into who I needed to be as a firefighter and as a man. But like I said, I hope that you guys have quicker success than I did with the panel interview, and hopefully this will kind of point you in the right direction of some of the things that you can do for it. Pretty much all basic common knowledge, but to some it's not. But thank you very much.